All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Birmingham Real Estate Investor Podcast. I am your host, Spencer Sutton, and I don't have my co-host with me today. Matthew Whitaker is not with us, and I'll just go ahead and say this is going to be fun because he usually hogs the microphone. He doesn't let me talk. He butts in when I'm trying to say something, so I'm excited about him not being here. Now, you know I'm kidding. Love Matthew. He'll be back on our next show, but we are excited, or I'm excited to have Melissa Dodson as my guest today. And Melissa is the owner. She and her husband own a company called Prime Home Buyers here in Birmingham, Alabama. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here, Spencer.
You know, what's interesting is why I'm so excited about interviewing Melissa is, and I was just telling her before we hit record, is because I see what she's doing in Birmingham very similar to what I used to be doing in Birmingham back 16, 17 years ago when I bought a Homevestor franchise and I was wholesaling houses. And I had more deal back in 2004, 2005, 2006, probably first part of 2007. I had more deals like coming at me. We had so many leads and it was just a different time back then. But in just a short time that I've gotten to know Melissa, I can tell it's going to be great because she is a wholesaler here in Birmingham. And so Melissa, first thing I want to do is let's just kind of give our listeners a little bit about your background. Tell us how you got into wholesaling, how you got into the business here in Birmingham, how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a funny story. I wanted nothing to do with real estate. Cared nothing about it. I've been a paralegal for 30 years. I've been in front of a judge and jury in a courtroom or in a law setting for all of that time. It's a very demanding and stressful role, but I loved it. And my husband, Kerry, has always kind of just played with real estate. You know, he did some stuff here and there and some flips, and he jumped into wholesaling. Gosh, I think it was in I might lie to you a little bit, but maybe 2015, 16, really cranked up the marketing. And I saw him doing it. And I'm like, whatever. You know, I was paying no attention. It was his side gig. He's an engineer. He's a network engineer. And he had a full-time job. And so there was just something on the side. But he did a lot of marketing all of a sudden.
And what was that? Just real quick, what was that marketing? You said he was doing some marketing. What was he doing?
He did direct mail.
Okay.
Yeah, he did direct mail. And so, but the postcard that he sent out was one of those old ones that made everybody mad, that looked like they were about to lose their house.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was back in the day. And that was kind of,
it was like warning, you better call today ASAP or this house is gone.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And so looking back on that, I was like, oh man, that was terrible. And so the calls started coming in like crazy. And he asked me if I would help him. I'm like, I don't know anything about real estate. And so he was like, just do this. Just find out if they want to sell their house. It's like, oh my gosh. Okay. And so I sat down on a Saturday and I dialed for like about 8 hours straight until I was crazy. I got cussed at, yelled at, hung up on, and I went downstairs and I was like, dude, no, these people are mad. But I did not know what postcard he had sent out. And I didn't know why these people were so stinking angry with me. Right. So that's kind of how I got started. And it's kind of funny now looking back at it. And so he went to we technically went, but he signed up for an event that Joe McCall and Gavin Timms were doing in San Diego. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you want to go to this event with me? It's in San Diego. Well, duh. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
San Diego. Of course I do. So I went, and the whole time we were in it, I was doodling, I was on my phone, I wasn't paying any attention at all. And we get down, to the end 3 days later, and you get to the table, where they're going to pitch you the coaching and everything. And
yeah,
it's kind of funny because we're actually business partners with Gavin Timms now, but Gavin's sitting across the table and he's like, all right, do you want to sign up for the coaching? And I'm like, whatever he wants to do. Okay. I was paying no attention. I have no idea what's going on.
Right.
And it was just kind of funny. So Kerry signed up, and then I went on helping him with the calls. And finally I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I need to have a clue what to say to these people. And so I talked to Gavin a few times, and that started in July. By October.
And what year was this? How long ago was this?
2016.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, 2016. So between October and December, we did 10 deals pretty quick. And so then once that happened, I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. And in that short period of time, I had replaced my paralegal income.
Wow.
And I was like, maybe there is something to this. And so as I would normally do, I took over the business. Just my personality. I didn't mean to. And so I was, Gavin and Carrie were like, you need to leave your job and do this full time. And I'm like, you've lost your mind. I have a great corporate job. There's no way I'm leaving my
great
job.
Benefits, all of that.
Great benefits, great salary. I had flex hours. I come and go as I wanted to. Like, who would not want that job? But I had replaced my income. And I started thinking about it. Well, my boss came to me and told me he was retiring. And with that came in a new attorney. And the new attorney pretty quickly was like, all right, you need to be here 8 to 5. And I need to know when to go into lunch. And we need to go over your caseload. And I was like, well, I'm out.
Bye-bye.
I don't know how to function in that world. Because I literally, if I wanted to go to lunch for 2 hours or come in at 10 or 8, I just did whatever I wanted to. Right. So I left and I called Gavin. I was like, okay, I'm in. Well, what do we got to do? And we've been blowing and going since then. So I guess it was February the 7th of 2017 is when I left my job. Been here ever since.
Which is great to hear. I think that's great to hear because, Melissa's been doing this for 4 years, and we just interviewed Price Hightower, who's been doing it 27 years, right? Yeah. And so there's people in real estate all across the spectrum. So if you're listening, if you're a listener and you're just getting started, listen, there's no better time to start than like right now. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions because you talked about, hey, I was with, partners with Mark and Gavin. So tell me, what does that look like? You're not sending out really ugly postcards anymore because you're not getting cussed out, which is the only reason your husband wanted you to call so that he wouldn't have to have those conversations. What does that relationship look like now? What kind of marketing are you doing to generate leads?
So just kind of add to that, about 7 months after I got started in 2017, when I started, my initial goal was to have Kerry out of his engineering job, which was a grind, within 2 years. And 7 months later, just to tell you, from that period of time, he left his job because we had replaced his income. So then he's full-time with me. So we are both doing it now. And so Kerry actually got his real estate license a year ago. And so he's kind of doing his own thing. He's on the retail side. I'm strictly handling the investment side. We do cold calling. We do some direct mail, not the ugly postcard. Don't do that. But we do a little bit of direct mail. We do cold calling. We've done PPC. We've kind of hit everything and tried everything. And every now and then we'll go through periods of where we just start testing things every quarter, every 6 months or so, just to see, because you have to stay on top of the marketing to see what's working. The market shifts constantly. But cold calling really has been our best avenue.
That's great. So you're cold calling, or you have someone cold call for you just to see, hey, do you have an interest in potentially selling your house? They're gauging interest. And then if it's something like, yeah, I might want to talk to somebody about that, then you're following up and having those conversations with them.
Yes. And so we have a team of VAs. I think we either have 5 or 6 now. And honestly, Gavin handles our VAs. He handles our lead gen and all that stuff. So I don't get into it, but we have 5 or 6 full-time VAs. And so we decide where we want to market to. We pull lists and just for different zip codes. And I say, all right, here's where we want to go. He pulls a list, have us get traced. It goes into our VAs. Our VAs are the one that cold calls everything. And then once it's a warm lead, then it goes into our CRM. And then I have an acquisitions manager that actually makes the call. He's now doing what I used to do. So okay. Yeah. So I'm not on the phone anymore. It's just every now and then I get on there.
But early on you were doing that, right? You were having these conversations, you were making offers, because this is what a wholesaler does. And this is what I used to do. A wholesaler has to have some difficult conversations. You're talking to people about something very personal. If it's not a rental house, if it's their personal house or a family house, if they've inherited it, whatever the case is, you're having these difficult conversations where you're offering a price that is right, or maybe even a little bit lower than what is right, or, what you can potentially pay for it. And they're emotional about it. So talk to me, Melissa, about what makes a great wholesaler / buyer, because I know I had a partner when I was doing this. He was a much better buyer than I was, because for him, it was simply a transaction. He didn't get emotionally involved necessarily. It was just like, this is what we're doing. And I'm going to have 20 of these conversations to buy 2 houses or whatever the case is. What makes a good wholesaler in your mind? A good buyer?
Yeah, to me, really the money's in the follow-up. And so you have to stay on your follow-up. I mean, out of, hundreds and hundreds of deals that we've done, less than 10 of them I've gotten on the first call. But really, you got to get on the phone with these people and have a conversation with them in such a way that they feel they can trust you. And that they can talk to you. So, and I, when I was teaching wholesaling, my first thing I told them is, don't pick up the phone and go, hey, my name's John and I want to buy your house, because you're just going to get hung up on. Right. Especially here in Alabama. Alabama's different. We're in multiple markets, and Alabama's different. It's very much a hometown type feel. And so if you get on the phone to do that, you're going to get cussed or hung up on. So I normally say, hey, hey, Mr. Smith, it's Melissa. How you doing today? And you have to say it in such a tone that you sound friendly, even if you're having a bad day. And so, and you just really have to learn to gauge their tone too. Like when they pick up the phone, do they immediately sound angry, or do they sound like they might be okay with talking to somebody? And so it's really just having that good conversation. I never go at them about the house, and I train people to not do that. It's like, how you doing today? I don't know about you, but I'm really tired of the cold weather. Or how about those pretty few days we had? Wasn't that great? Spring's coming. How have you done through COVID? I mean, just whatever's going on, it doesn't really matter. Let them talk, because if you'll get them talking, their guard's going to go down. They're going to be more relaxed. And somewhere in that conversation, you're going to get to the point of, oh, well, why did you call? Or I'm going to say, oh, we're busy talking about the weather. I guess you're wondering why I called you. And then you can go, sometimes, and because it's just my personality, I'm better at winging it. I'm not good at a script. But I'll say, hey, we were in the neighborhood, saw your house. We were interested, thought you might be interested in selling it. Tell me about it. And it's just having that conversation, and really not so much you talking, but letting them talk. Because if you'll just let them talk and guide the conversation as much as you can, they're going to tell you everything you need to know.
No, that's true. That's a great point. So much of this is probably market specific, like in how you deal with people. And we found that out at Evernest, as we are in a lot of different markets. The way we sell our property management services to somebody in Birmingham is a lot different than how we do it in Denver, right? It's just 2 totally different personalities. So a couple things that you brought up, I want to ask you about. How do you, because Birmingham, where you're buying in Birmingham, is such a local, kind of tight-knit community, how do you bridge the gap from a VA that is, I'm guessing, is not here in Birmingham with you, a VA making the initial phone call to somebody else, like your acquisitions manager getting on the phone? Like, are they put off by a VA calling them, or are they okay with that? And then really the trust is built on that second call.
Yeah, it really is. And our VAs are well trained, and we screen them well up front, so they do not have a thick accent, which is very important. Now, obviously, most of them are in the Philippines, so you're not going to dispose of all of that accent.
Yeah, sure.
But we screen them well, and they're well trained, and we don't hire anyone with a bad accent. And we have conversations with them. We do Zooms with them. We do those things up front just to kind of see their mannerisms and what they sound like. So we've not had that problem as far as bridging the gap from the VA to our acquisitions guy, because we've worked hard to find good VAs that don't have that strong accent. I don't think I've ever had any seller say anything about an accent from my VAs.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So, our VAs know what to ask. They're asking specific things about the house if they can get to that. If they can't get to that, they're trained to hear the motivation in their voice, even if they can't get the info. And when they put the notes in there, it's like, I sense that they're motivated, but they didn't really want to give me details.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then our acquisitions guy takes over.
That's great. Some of that is definitely reading between the lines and figuring things out. And, if you can do that, that's going to be a huge advantage. So you mentioned something that I think is very important. It's important in our business. I know it is in wholesaling. And that is, we usually say the fortune is in the follow-up, and you mentioned that. Talk to me about a follow-up process. Like, how do you, if you have a lot of leads, how are you making sure you're following up? And then, how many times do you think you're following up with people to either get them on the phone or to buy the property?
So normally, again, that's kind of a personality gauge as far as our acquisitions manager goes. And he's very good, and he is local. He's here in Birmingham. And so our follow-up is such that, they pay attention to when the VA got them on the phone. So if they got them on the phone at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, that's probably a good time to catch them. So that's when they're going to call them. If they don't get them, then they're going to try them in the afternoon. If they don't get them on Monday, they're going to try them on Wednesday. If they don't get them on that, they're going to try them on the weekend, maybe in the afternoon. So it's really, it's just a process. Typically, we rotate those days and times until we get them on the phone. Now, if we don't get them on the phone after 4 or 5 attempts, then we're going to hand it back to the VA and go warm this back up and say, hey, we've been trying to get in touch with you. Do you have a better phone number? Would you rather us text you? Would you rather us email you? And just kind of warm that back up and put it back in there, because we have thousands of leads in the CRM. So if we don't hand some of them off at some point and let them roll back into the system, there's no way we could keep up with it.
Right. So you are turning them back over to the VA and saying, keep going. But I think that's really important. We're telling our people, if somebody has reached out or is interested in property management services, we want to touch them no less than 10 times before we then put them in a drip campaign in our CRM. That's just going to drip. It could drip on them for 12 months because you never know when that motivation is going to hit them. Okay.
And we've closed many deals that we followed up with for 2 years because maybe something was going on in their life at the time. Sometimes there's a death, sometimes there's all kind of things that happen.
That's right.
And if we get to that 10 call point and whatever's going on in their life still hasn't resolved itself, then we'll put them on 3 months and then we'll move them to 6 months. But we stay on them. If it's a property that we like, we really want, and we know that they're motivated, they have to clear this, whatever it is up in their life, we'll stay on it. I rarely kill any lead. Pretty much the only time I kill a lead or tell the guys to kill a lead is if they say, just don't call me again.
Right.
Or something like that. Otherwise, if it's a property that I think is valuable and we're interested in, we're going to stay on it. And that will mean sometimes, the VA they're typically good about putting in, maybe got them on text, but I didn't get them on phone, because our VAs will text them if they don't get them on the phone. And so all of those notes are in our CRM. And so when my acquisitions guy here, he'll call them, he'll send them a text if you don't get them. And he'll do that a few times. And if he don't, typically if they have an email that's in there, he'll shoot them an email.
Gotcha. So you've got this marketing machine, you're finding deals, you're putting them under contract. I'm assuming that somebody's going out and walking the property just to make sure, hey, this is exactly what we think it is. Because you can look at Google Maps and all that stuff, but you really want to get out there. If you're wholesaling, and we'll get into some of your flips, I know that you're starting here in just a second, but if you're wholesaling, who are you wholesaling to? Like, who are most of your houses being sold to?
Well, that has changed a little bit with COVID, because our marketing changed with COVID. And so because of COVID, the rental market's kind of shifted a little bit. And, and with the mandates, like you can't evict them, and some people weren't paying their rent. And we quickly kind of shifted out of the part into the rental type houses, more into the flip type houses. So I would say for all of 2020, we probably did 95% in flips, as far as selling to flippers instead of tenanted properties or even rental properties that were vacant. We just didn't do that many.
Was that because you saw a slowdown in demand from rental house buyers, or was it just purely y'all's decision based on, hey, we see this kind of coming with the market. We think we need to focus in on these flip areas because these are going to be better because the market is still very, very hot on the retail side.
Yeah, it is. It was kind of a combination of both. So I talked to a lot of my buyers and go, kind of, what are you feeling with this COVID thing? What's going on? How are your tenants doing? And so I talked to some of them, and and I got the feeling that they were all a little skittish. Obviously, nobody knew what was happening. Mm-hmm. And then I talked to my bigger flippers, and I'm like, so are y'all pushing forward? What are you doing? And they're like, no, we're go. I'm like, okay. So that week, it was just kind of a combination of a feeling of, it's going to be more difficult to deal with these tenanted properties right now because nobody really knows what's happening with this virus. And then talking to everybody, and I was like, let's just shift over into different marketing. We've always done deals in flip markets and in rental markets. So we had them all over the place anyway. Mm-hmm. But we just shifted hard over into the flip side because I thought that's just going to be a better bet. And it really was. We did more business probably during COVID than we ever expected.
So tell me a little bit about that. Let's talk about areas of Birmingham. So for our listeners, we have a lot of them in out of state and whatever. They're wondering, well, what are the more kind of rental areas that you would have been buying in that you're maybe not anymore? And what are some of the areas that are flip areas that you're seeing are great for home flippers?
Yeah. So almost anything in Shelby County, obviously, when you get over into Chelsea, Pelham, Hoover, Helena, Alabaster, all those areas, those are good flip markets. And as far as Jefferson County, it's Vestavia Hills, Hoover, Homewood, Mountain Brook. That's kind of where we target, but we also look at Irondale and Roebuck and most of those, what I call bread and butter areas. Not everybody can afford Vestavia, Mountain Brook, and over in that area. But then when you kind of get, not really in a C market, just kind of get that good B market where you get Irondale and Trustful and all of those areas. So we do both of them in there. I don't work D markets at all.
Gotcha.
I get them passively because it seems to happen constantly that somebody in Vestavia, like, I'll sell you this one in Vestavia, but I want to unload these 3 over here in the West End. I'm like, hey, I'm so excited. And so it's kind of funny because I'll call. I have 2 or 3 guys that like that area, say, hey, here are these, I'm buying this house. Do you want these things? Yeah. And you kind of said something about going out and looking at houses. I would say that out of 10 deals we close a month, I might see 2 of those houses.
Right.
I don't go see them. I can't. Sometimes I will pay somebody to go take pictures if I really need to. But I've been in this business long enough now that I can call my buyers. I pretty much know who I'm going to sell it to if I'm not going to buy it. And just say, hey, we just got the contract back on this house. You want to go look at it, or you're probably going to want it. I've not been in it, haven't seen it. Here's how you get in it. Or you just tell me when you want in, and I'll have my acquisitions guy set up. You get in there and you just go look at it, and you tell me what you want. I don't know. I know a lot of wholesalers around here who go see every property. I personally cannot fathom that. I like doing it virtually.
Yeah. Well, when I was doing it, Melissa, just to give you an idea, we were driving around Birmingham with a map book of Birmingham. That's how old I am. We had a map book and we were like trying to find our way through Eastlake and Inslee and all these different places because we were buying in the D areas, which is where you've chosen to stay away from. So just to let our listeners know, like what the places that she's talking about. So she mentioned Vestavia, Mountain Brook, Homewood. These are Class A areas, right? There are not a lot of not a lot of rentals in these areas for the most part. There's a lot of just owner occupied houses. Then when she's talking about Shelby County, you're talking about south of town, Alabaster, Helena, Calera. These areas are phenomenal. B areas, right? And same thing, you know, if you go out to Leeds and Trustful and Moody and those types of places. So those are great areas. So what she's saying is she's really avoiding more of the inner Jefferson County stuff, the West Ends, the Insleys, the East Lakes, even though we've seen an uptick in East Lake, like the price values are going crazy and people are retailing stuff there, which is nuts to me. Yeah. But, well, good. So I think this is very, very informative. So you're selling to these flippers. Are you taking them under contract? Are you taking these houses down, or are you doing just wholesale at the close, like a double closing type thing?
We double close everything. Mm-hmm. But some of them we are taking down. So it really just kind of depends on the situation with the seller. Yeah. And so there's not really a clear cut. We have the ability to just go ahead and take them down, and we do that. I don't do it just to tie up money because we're buying flips ourselves now. And so I don't do as many. A lot of times I'll just double close it and we'll do it all at one time, one transaction. So it just kind of depends. And it's funny that you said East Lake, because I just sold one yesterday in East Lake, and I picked up that property and we thought we would flip it until I sent my contractor out there, and I was like, oh no, not doing that. But I sold it for some ridiculous price yesterday. What was it?
Was it just too much work? Is that why when your contractor looked at it, he said, no way? Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, oh, this is 60, 70,000 in reno. And I was like, no, I'm not pulling the trigger on that one. And so, you know, that was pretty quick and easy. But it's funny you said that about East Lake. And I remember that when that happened to Avondale, I can't tell you how many times I have kicked myself in the behind about Avondale, because 4 years ago, I could have bought, 100 properties for $8,000 in Avondale. And I see what they're selling for now. And I'm like, oh my God.
It's nuts. Yeah. And so we get people call us and ask us, hey, what's the next up and coming area? I want the next Avondale. And so they're seeing that in East Lake. Now people are seeing that in Norwood, which to me was, we told people never go there just because it was always coming back, but never did come back. But now you're actually seeing a lot of renovation. And really when you're getting into these older houses, the renovations can be a big bear just because they're older houses. You've got to update plumbing, electrical, everything. So that's great. So now you mentioned doing some flips. You started, to dip your toe in flips, even though you and your husband had done some flips in the past. Mm-hmm. But now that you're 4 years into this, you've been wholesaling everything now. So what made you decide to kind of take on these flipping opportunities? Because it's just a lot more work.
It is a lot more work. One, and we talked about this before the podcast, really it fits my personality, because when my eyes open in the morning, I'm on go. Yeah. And as much as I love wholesaling, and I do because we do it virtually, it's kind of in the office and it's quick and easy and I enjoy it and it's fun. But now that I've got other people doing the bulk of the work for me, I'm like, all right, well, what are we going to do next? And Carrie's kind of wanted to get back into it for a while. And so we just said, you know what, we're leaving a lot of money on the table. Now I'm I haven't jumped into that $200,000 reno market yet. I mean, because that's a lot. But we saw, several right off the bat, and we're like, this is not going to be too bad. If we can jump in the $50,000, $60,000 or less reno and get these things turned pretty quick, we just need to do it because we're leaving money on the table. And we have very good marketing. Gavin is very good at it. Mm-hmm. So we have access to a lot of them. And so the last 6-8 months or so, I've been watching, I'm selling these things, and then I'm good friends with most of my buyers, and I'm like, and I'm
see what they're making.
And I'm like, let's just do that. And so, and like I said before the podcast, is like, no, I don't want to do it. No, well, maybe, probably not. And then I was like, okay, let's buy 3. And it was just, so for me, it's just like when I pull the trigger, it's like go. So now we've got a bunch of them going at one time. And, but we're excited about it.
And I will say, if you don't have the personality like Melissa, that would probably overwhelm you. But like she said, she is up and at 'em and she likes the high stress high activity type day. So that will do it. So and you're even, you told me we were on the phone the other day. You told me that you're not even really confined to Birmingham. You've done some deals outside of Birmingham. Like, how does that happen?
It's really networking. And I said this the other day on Clubhouse. This whole business is about networking. You're either networking with your sellers or networking with your buyers. It's just really being in front of people. And COVID has changed that a little bit. But it's really all about networking. And so we had, Gavin actually knew somebody that did flips and development in Maui, Hawaii. And talked to the guy, and he was like, hey, I can't find any property out here. We're like, hey, that's one thing we're really good at. And so we partnered with him. Now, I didn't get to go to Maui, but I'm going to. So anyway, we found the property. He bought it. He flipped it. And, we got profits on the front end and on the back end. And so we did this huge thing in Maui. And I was like, so for me,
wow, that's great.
I'm not going to lie to you. I was the one calling Maui, because I thought, I don't have any idea what that's going to look like. And so you got a lot of native Hawaiians, and the accents are crazy.
So you were the one actually making the initial calls in Hawaii?
The VAs called them, but I'm the one who made the acquisition.
The follow. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I worked on those, and it's different. Negotiating $1 million wholesale deal as opposed to, a $20,000 one. It's a little different, same process, but when you're talking to people in Maui, they know what they have. They've been in Maui. They know
That's
where
right.
they live.
Right.
So it's a little bit different, and it took a little more talking. And I tell you, we went to John Martinez boot camp, and which is phenomenal, by the way, in Dallas. This has been a couple of years ago. And he really is good at teaching to pull back. And I had done it a little bit, but not a lot. And I was actually standing there talking to him about this deal. And I'm like, I just can't get this woman to bite. And we're so close. He said, walk away from it. Just say, you know what, this is not going to work. It's just must not be the right time for you right now. And he said, I know it's going to hurt you when you do it, but just do it, it'll work. And I was like, tried to lock this thing up for months. He's like, just do it.
There's such a fear when you think about doing that. Like, what if they say, okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See ya. And that's actually what she did.
Really?
So I told her, I got into this quiet place, and it was like this, okay, I'm just going to breathe, and I'm going to call her, and I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And I did. And she was very sweet, but I was like, you know what? I just think this might not be the right time for you. I mean, you got some things going on in your life, and that's okay. So we'll just catch up with you later. And if you change your mind, let me know, but we might not be in a place to buy it right then, because we're kind of ready right now. And we're going to go buy some other properties. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but I would like for you to call me when you're ready. And she was like, oh, okay. All right. Well, we got off the phone. I was like, what did I just do? I spent all that time trying to negotiate that deal. She called me back, and it wasn't very long that she called me back.
Wow.
And she's like, you know what? When you hung up the phone, you said I might not be able to buy it. And then I thought, what have I done? Because if I wait, 3 months to see what's going to happen, I might call her back, and I don't have anybody else to buy this house. It worked. So I called John immediately. I was like, John, it worked.
That's
great. Yeah, he actually put that marketing on some of that information on some of his marketing. And he's like, that was great that actually worked out. And I was like, dude, you weren't lying. That hurt. It hurt to say that to her. So I thought, I'm going to lose that deal. But it was great. So I think we bought it for, this what seems like a large amount in Maui, and it took a lot of renovation, but we sold it for a premium because you could go up a floor and make it ocean view. That's a thing about some of those resorts. If you can go to the left, look out one little corner in a window somewhere and see one little piece of water, it's ocean view. So
it's ocean view. So that's what, so you're saying you actually, are you saying you blew the top out and went up a floor? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you added a floor so you could see the ocean and command a premium price.
Yep. Yeah.
That is.
And I never got to go see it. We got pictures, but it worked out. But now it took a little while to get that renovated and closed. That happened, like I said, probably a year or so ago, and it just closed maybe 3 or 4 months ago. So And when Gavin called me and told me, because he found out before I did that it sold and it was in closing, I was like, oh, God, we actually did it. And so I did that sitting from my desk in Alabama. And it was really just kind of a challenge for me. I was like,
yeah,
we can do a deal in Maui. I can do a deal anywhere. So, and which is really the truth.
So does that open you up? Are you thinking, hey, let's go ahead and expand into even more areas?
Yeah, we're already in Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Maui. And we have a little one-off things that we do kind of all over the country. Something comes around and I'll wholesale that stuff. So we're actually looking for some flips on the Panhandle right now in Florida. But yeah, I would say we generally stay in the Southeast as far as wholesale goes. Yeah. And the only reason we're looking to flip on the Panhandle is on 30A. It's just because that's my happy place. That's where I like to go. So I was like, let's do a flip down there.
Yeah, I think it's important. You know, Melissa brings up some great points. First of all, it was a great story. But secondly, you know, what you see from Melissa is that she really honed in on Birmingham, got to know her market. When she started out, she didn't know much about Birmingham as far as like where she needed to be buying and wholesaling and flipping houses. So she really focused in on that. I know that you did some stuff in Mississippi early on just because you're from Mississippi. But we, you know, on this podcast, we talk all the time to investors and we say, focus in, like focus, understand your market, maybe pick a few zip codes or one zip code. And the more and more successful real estate investors that I speak to, both here in Birmingham, we also have another podcast called the Atlanta Real Estate Investor. And we interview a lot of successful Atlanta real estate investors. And they say the same thing. Like they started out just doing that. So that's great to hear. Then you can start going, okay, I've figured this out. I can expand and do some other stuff.
Yeah. And it's kind of the same wholesaling as a general rule. No matter where you go, it's just pretty much the same process. And you can learn a lot about any market online. Now, obviously, Birmingham's our primary market. And, you know, if you had asked me 5 years ago where Inslee was, I went, where? What? But I did over that period of time, over the last 4 years, I've really learned where everything is and where I don't want to be and where I do want to be. And I can recite the zip codes and, you know, and kind of what streets are what. So we kind of know. And that's important. And right now in Birmingham, you're seeing a lot of wholesalers and companies come in from all over the country, all over the world, really. And the thing that I see the most of that's actually kind of frustrating is they send me these quote deals and they're obviously just not because they don't know the market. So those numbers look really good on paper until it's sitting over in, you know, Fairfield. And you're like, those numbers don't work. And so there's so many people here just trying to do it based on, hey, I think these numbers work without doing a lot of research. You know, they're just throwing some marketing out there. And, you know, typically those people are not going to hang around long because it's going to be hard to do deals. But it has made Birmingham much more competitive than it's ever been because people are locking up deals. Even if they're wrong, they're locking them up.
That's right.
Which is frustrating sellers. You know, I can't tell you how many times a day my acquisitions guy actually will call me and say, will you please get on the phone with me with this guy because he is like not happy. And I'll get on the phone with them sometimes. And I'm like, and I just tell the sellers, I'm like, look, I get it. You know, you've been bit by somebody that didn't understand the market. They're not here. They made you some crazy offer. They couldn't close on it. That's not who we are. Here's our website. You know, you can check these references or whatever. I just closed 2 of them last week that were that way. And it's just really talking them off the ledge and going, I'm sorry that happened to you. But it's becoming more and more of an issue.
Yeah, way different than it was back when I was doing it. There weren't a lot of us in the market, wholesalers. We closed pretty much everything, or we did a double closing, you know, and we would even tell the owner, hey, we don't want to buy this, but we know some people who will. So we'll do we'll flip this house. But now you're seeing people, like you said, very frustrating, who will put it under contract at some super high price that they never intend on closing. All they intend to do is shop it out and try to find somebody. So that is frustrating. And then on top of that, You have so many institutions in Birmingham now buying, and they are really paying high dollar prices. So
yes, they are.
Houses. So the market has definitely changed. And even through COVID, it's still a strong market for institutions and buyers. So, well, just real quick before we end, Melissa, I just wanted to ask you, you're selling to a lot of people, flippers and flippers and people who are buying rental properties. What makes a good buyer? Like if somebody wanted to get on your list and say, Melissa, I want you to think of me when you have one of these deals, what makes a great buyer in your opinion?
Well, generally, so if I don't know you, and that happens a lot of time, and actually it's kind of funny because Brian and I talked about it because he tells me all the time, what do I have to do to get on your list?
And you know Brian.
And I know Brian. I know him very well. But, historically back in the day, he was buying stuff that I wasn't marketing to. And of course, and we actually just sold Brian a property in Vestavia. So it was kind of a joke. I was like, oh, finally, you're a real property. So, as far as a buyer goes, if I don't know them kind of up front, I'm doing some vetting. I'm asking around. I'm calling the attorney and saying, are these actual buyers? And just kind of vetting that. But I would say generally for me is a buyer that I'm going to continue to sell to. If I send it to you, you put up your earnest money, you do those things, you follow through, and I don't get any of that, renegotiation up front. So if you tell me you're going to pay whatever it is, $100,000 for the property, I send you the contract and you sign it. 9 times out of 10, unless we've negotiated something up front, that's no further inspection. Cash as is, we're done. But I've had a few buyers that I've kind of, tried to run with. They were like, well, I didn't notice this. And I'm like, no, it's not going to float.
Yeah.
And so generally, I just won't do business with them anymore.
That's right.
So I think a good buyer really is just somebody that's consistent and kind of understands. And I'll tell you something else that can get frustrating with buyers. If they care what you make, because I'm not in this to make $1,500 property. I mean, we do have a whole team of people working, and so we have some overhead. But even if you don't, a good buyer should not really care what you make, because if that number works for the buyer, the number works for the buyer.
That's right.
And quite often, especially on the front end, we'll go back and renegotiate with the seller. So if I know firm that buyer's at $100,000, and I want to make 20 on it, and we think that we can get the seller there, we know that there's some motivation. Then I'm going to, have my guys go back to the seller and go, we really wanted to do it for that. Is there any way you would consider this and renegotiate it and try to build it on the back end? So, but there have been a few buyers that have said, well, I saw what you made on that property. I'm like,
yep.
That shouldn't bother you.
I will tell you that is a quick way to get marked off of the list if you care. Like when I was wholesaling, and I would tell people the same thing, Melissa. I would say, what does it matter if I paid $1? Doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. What I paid, you are, as long as the numbers work for you, then it doesn't really matter. And then, so I think Melissa makes some great points. Don't concern yourself with what a wholesaler is paying for it. And then if you want to be a great buyer, do what you say you're going to do. Be ready to close quickly. Make a decision, not back out of a decision. All those things are very, very important if you're really serious about it. So, hey, Melissa, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I'm glad to just kind of get to know you, even if it is through this and our phone calls. It's always great to meet investors. I think Birmingham is a great city. A lot of people are so helpful. And I know when I was starting, people were helping me. So thank you for your time. Thanks for giving us some great nuggets here.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me on.
And so we did talk about this before we got started. If people wanted just to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Email 100%. So it's melissa@primehomebuyers.com. I'm obviously on my phone or in front of my computer pretty much 24/7. So I'll see it. If you have questions, send it to me. We're looking for more property. I'm trying to buy 2 more flips to do in in March. And so we're looking for property now like everybody else.
Right.
So send me what you got. But I do want B&C markets, B&A markets, not so much rental property. And we'll still look at them. And, and I help a lot of wholesalers around here, JV stuff, and I get a lot of calls about it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't mind. Like, I have a huge buyers list. Do I use that huge buyers list? Not really. But, I've got, 20 people that probably get everything that I pick up. So, but if somebody needs help with that, I don't mind helping. I don't mind, people asking questions. I like teaching and I like helping people. There's enough property in this town for everybody to do some business. So it's okay.
Awesome.
But I do need property to buy.
Okay. There it is. There's her plug. She wants more property. So good. Hey, we're happy to share that. Well, listen, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast. I'm going to ask you to leave a review on Apple iTunes. It's a great way for people to find us. And if you want to hear other investors talk who aren't from Birmingham, we've interviewed a lot on our Atlanta real estate investing podcast. So go check that out as well. And we will be back with you next week, I believe. So we're actually going to start releasing episodes each week instead of every other week. So we're excited about that. Matthew and I are going to hop on and talk a lot about landlording tips and things that you can do to build successful real estate portfolios over time. All right, everybody, we will catch you next week with a new episode.